When Marcus texted, "Mom, we had to cancel the family trip. Finances won't allow it. We'll reschedule for later," I believed him. I had worked all summer, taking extra shifts while they, or so they said, were also working hard to recover financially. 3 weeks later, I opened Instagram and saw the truth. My daughter-in-law, Chantel, had posted photos from a Caribbean cruise. The whole family was there. Marcus wore a crisp white linen shirt, smiling in the sun. Chantel wore an expensive coral dress. My grandchildren, Jamal and Naomi, had designer straw hats that must have cost a lot on those ships. Even Chantel's parents, Chuck and Eleanor Holt, were in the photo, toasting with champagne. Everyone but me. The caption read, "Unforgettable family vacation." Unforgettable. That word felt like a rusty knife twisting in my chest. I said nothing. I didn't cry or shout. I didn't call them. I held my silence and continued my life as if nothing had happened. But something inside me cracked in that moment and didn't heal. 3 weeks after the discovery, my phone vibrated at 7 a.m. It was Marcus. "Mom, I urgently need $6,000. Credit card issue. I'll pay you back next month." I read it 5 times. Each word felt like a slap. $6,000. Urgent as always, just like it had been for the last 8 years. My fingers trembled when I typed the reply. "Ask your wife's family." 4 words that changed everything. 4 words that cost me decades of submission, but gave me something I hadn't expected. Freedom. Marcus called 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Chantel sent a long message full of confusing explanations about misunderstandings and surprises. I deleted it without reading it all. That afternoon, I went to the bank and closed the joint account we'd shared for years. I canceled the extra cards in their names and blocked automatic transfers. For the first time in nearly a decade, I breathed without feeling a hand on my throat. To explain why those 4 words were so powerful, I need to go back. I need to tell how a 73-year-old Black woman who worked her whole life became the family ATM. How a mother's love slowly turned into a gilded trap she couldn't find a way out of. It began 8 years earlier when my husband Earl died, leaving me a paid-off house, a modest pension, and some savings. I was devastated, but Marcus seemed worse. He was my only son, my reason for living, and watching him hurt broke my heart. 2 months after the funeral, he visited with Chantel. They sat on the same couch where I'm remembering this now. Marcus took my hand with the gentle touch he always used. "Mom, I need to ask you something," he said softly. "Chantel and I want to throw a special Sweet 16 for Naomi. You know how sensitive she is. With the expense of Dad's funeral and the economy, we just can't swing it. Could you lend us $10,000? I promise we'll pay you back in 6 months." I looked at Chantel. She nodded with a practiced smile. "It's just a temporary loan, Ruby. We want Naomi to have a beautiful memory. You understand, right?" Of course I understood. I was the grandmother. I wanted to be useful after losing my husband. I wanted to still matter. So I said yes. I transferred the $10,000 the next day. Naomi's party was at an upscale private venue with colored lights and a chocolate fountain. I sat at a back table watching my granddaughter dance. They never repaid me. They never mentioned it again, and I never asked. 6 months later came the next request. "Mom, we need to remodel the kitchen." The pipes are old, $8,000 then. Chantel's car broke down. $12,000. Then Jamal's private university because the public option wasn't good enough. $45,000. $15,000 per year for 3 years. Each time there was a reason. Each time it was urgent and temporary. And each time I opened my account and transferred the money because that's what mothers do. Sacrifice, give without expecting anything. Be the invisible support holding things together. What I didn't understand then, what took years and about $60,000 to learn, is the difference between helping and being used, between love and manipulation, between family and convenience. The first years after Earl's death left me lost and lonely, clinging to anything that kept me afloat. Marcus knew every weakness, every vulnerable corner of my heart as a widowed mother. He came on Sundays with Chantel and the kids, always with a long hug that made me feel like I still had a family. "Mom, you look tired," he'd say as Chantel made coffee in my kitchen as if she lived there. "You should rest more. We're here for whatever you need." I felt lucky. How foolish and blind I was not to see those visits always ended with a request wrapped like a gift. Marcus had a talent for making needs sound like emergencies. He never said, "I want." He always said, "We need." It was never for him. It was for the children, for the future, to keep things stable at home. "Mom, Jamal needs a math tutor if he's to get into a good university." "Mom, Naomi needs braces urgently." "Mom, we need to replace the roof. It's dangerous." Each plea sounded solid and believable. I, who had worked 53 years as a certified nursing assistant and in hospital housekeeping, and who had saved with the discipline of someone who knows scarcity, opened my wallet again and again. Chantel was subtler but just as effective. She rarely asked directly. She dropped poisoned comments disguised as concern. "Oh, Ruby, it's a shame you can't come to Jamal's birthday at the club, but I understand those places are a little too formal for you. It's a pity Naomi can't go on the class trip to Europe with her friends." Feeling guilty about having money while my grandchildren lacked things, I offered help that was never explicitly requested but clearly expected. $3,000 for the trip, $2,000 for the club membership, money for Naomi's graduation dress. Small financial bleedings added up to a river flowing only one way. There were signs I ignored, small alarms I turned off because recognizing them would mean admitting something painful. I drove past their house and saw a brand new SUV with chrome rims. When I asked Marcus, he said it was borrowed from a friend. 2 months later, I saw Chantel driving it. Naomi posted photos of a beach weekend that must have cost at least $4,000. 1 month after Marcus told me they were struggling. I stayed silent. I swallowed my doubts, convinced I was a suspicious old woman. If I questioned too much, I feared I would lose the only family connection I had left. The truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of being alone. Of stopping the giving and losing their visits. Of becoming a forgotten woman in an empty house waiting for calls that never came. So I kept being generous. The involved grandmother who always had an envelope of cash. I settled for crumbs of attention, a 10-minute phone call a week, a monthly visit under an hour, photos of my grandchildren only on social media because they never sent them directly. I smiled and said everything was fine, that it was enough. Inside, a part of me withered. I starved emotionally while my bank account drained. The breaking point began to form 6 months before the cruise, though I didn't recognize it then. Chantel organized a family dinner for her parents' wedding anniversary. I found out by chance when Naomi said in a quick FaceTime, "Grandma, I can't talk long. We're getting ready for Grandpa and Nana Holt's party." I felt sharp pain. Grandpa and Nana Holt, as if I didn't exist. I called Marcus that night. "Son, Naomi mentioned a dinner." An awkward silence. "Oh yeah, Mom. It's just something small, intimate. You know how Chantel's family is, very tight-knit. We thought it would be better this way." I hung up feeling empty. I didn't feel bad. I felt invisible. But again, I kept silent. 2 weeks later, Marcus came to my door, looking worried. "I need to talk to you about something serious, Mom." He sat on the edge of the couch with his hands clasped. "The company is doing layoffs. I might be let go. Chantel is stressed. The kids need stability. We need a cushion for the next few months. Could you lend us $20,000? $20,000 hit me like a punch. "Marcus, that's a lot," I said, voice trembling. "I know, Mom. If I had another option, I wouldn't ask. You're our safety net. Please." He looked like the scared little boy who always melted me. Once again, I gave in. I transferred the $20,000 on a Tuesday and had to go to the bank in person to authorize it. The teller asked me 3 times if I was sure. "It's for my family," I said. She nodded with a professional smile that held silent judgment. I signed because I still believed I was saving my son from a real crisis. I still believed the money was a bridge to better times. I still believed in family. Marcus called that afternoon, voice full of relief. "Thank you, Mom. You don't know the weight you lifted. I promise this is temporary. In 6 months, I'll pay you back. I hung up feeling useful and needed. What a bitter irony. The next 2 months were strangely quiet. Marcus didn't call as often. His texts were short. All good, Mom. Busy with work. Chantel stopped responding in the family chat. When I tried to video call the grandkids, they were always busy. I began to feel like a bother, interrupting lives that ran fine without me. One afternoon, I called Marcus for reassurance. Mom, I can't talk now. I'm in an important meeting. I'll call you back. He never called. That night, I sat with a cup of tea that went cold while I watched the phone, waiting for something I knew wouldn't come. It was Dot, my neighbor, who made me start questioning things. She's 68, a widow like me, but with a quiet dignity I lacked. One afternoon, she invited me for coffee. Ruby, forgive me for prying, but you look different, quieter. What's going on? And without planning to, I told her everything. The loans never repaid, the broken promises, buying crumbs of attention with $100 bills. Dot listened without interrupting, eyes fixed on mine. When I finished, she sighed. Ruby, you aren't a mother. You're a bank. And banks charge interest. Not just financial, emotional too. What was I getting back for all I gave? That question haunted me for days. The answer: rushed calls, obligatory visits, being remembered only when money was needed. A week after talking with Dot, something small pushed me over the edge. It was Jamal's 21st birthday. I had bought him a gift a month earlier, a genuine leather wallet I knew he'd like. I called Marcus to ask what time the family gathering would be. There was an awkward pause. Mom, Jamal just wants something small this year with his friends. You know how young people are. I'll bring your gift to him. Don't worry. I hung up feeling something new. Not sadness, but anger. Anger that I wasn't even allowed on the edge of their lives. Anger that I'd been at every one of Jamal's birthdays, sometimes paying for them, and now I didn't deserve an hour of his time. That night, I opened my laptop and went through 8 years of bank statements. I'd never added it all up before. I was too afraid to see the total. But I needed the truth. I started a spreadsheet. Naomi's Sweet 16, $10,000. Kitchen, $8,000. Chantel's car, $12,000. Jamal's university, $45,000 for 3 years. Roof, $7,000. Class trip, $3,000. Club membership, $2,000. Dresses, tutors, alleged medical emergencies, repairs that never happened. I kept entering numbers. When I reached the bottom, the total glowed on the screen like an accusation. $62,300. $62,300 in 8 years. I stared until the digits blurred. That sum represented my lifetime of work, 53 years of labor, saving, and sacrifice. And what did I have in return? An empty house, a nearly silent phone, grandchildren who treated me like an obligation, and a son who saw me as a solution to his money problems, not as a person. I closed the laptop and felt something inside harden. No tears, no screams, just a cold clarity I'd never known. For the first time in years, I asked myself whether a mother's love had to mean self-destruction, whether limitless giving was virtue or cowardice disguised as sacrifice. A week later, Marcus called on a Saturday. His tone was casual. Mom, we had planned a family cruise for this summer, but we'll have to cancel. The economy's bad. We'll postpone to next year. A quiet alarm went off in me. What cruise? I asked. Oh, it was an idea Chantel and I had. We wanted to surprise you, but it's better to be realistic. I nodded, giving him the benefit of the doubt, that blind faith mothers often offer. I decided to believe him one last time. The summer arrived and I stayed home, busying myself with chores, sorting photos, and cooking meals that I ate alone. Dot invited me to a book club at the community center. No thanks, I said. I'm not in the mood. She looked at me without pity. Ruby, are you waiting for your phone to ring? You're living in pause. That's not life. She was right, but I wasn't ready. 3 weeks of silence passed. Marcus didn't call to check on me or send a quick message. I tried to tell myself he was busy, that family time required attention. but a persistent unease lodged in my stomach like a cold stone. Then, while making soup one Thursday, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. I rarely used social media, only to see photos of the grandchildren, but something nudged me to open the app. 20 minutes earlier, Chantel had posted. My heart raced. I tapped her profile and saw her on the deck of a huge ship, turquoise sea behind her, wearing the coral dress and sunglasses with a perfect smile. The caption read, "Unforgettable family vacation." I swiped. Marcus in a white linen shirt, tanned, holding a cocktail with a tiny umbrella. Relaxed. Worry-free. Jamal and Naomi by the pool in pricey straw hats sold on cruise boardwalks. The family dining in an elegant ship restaurant with white tablecloths and wine glasses. Then a group shot. Marcus, Chantel, Jamal, Naomi, and Chantel's parents, all smiling, toasting together. Everyone but me, the air left my lungs. My hands shook. I examined every image for an explanation and found none. The truth was plain. They hadn't canceled a trip. They'd canceled me. Marcus had looked worried on the phone and lied to my face. They'd decided I didn't deserve to be there. Chantel's parents did. They'd planned it, excluded me, and then posted the proof for the world to see. 14 posts. 14 moments that proved my place in their lives was disposable. In one picture, Chantel posed before a giant lobster with a caption celebrating how life had been generous to them, as if the cruise money had fallen from the sky. I estimated the cost. Ocean view cabins, upscale dining, cocktails, entertainment, easily $10,000 or more, perhaps $15,000. They told me they couldn't afford luxuries while still asking me to cover their bills. I walked to the window, legs weak, the sun outside indifferent as people went about their lives while mine crumbled. I zoomed in on a life preserver and read the cruise line's name, a luxury brand, 5-star experiences. Not cheap. It wasn't just the lie. It was the intention. They'd crafted a story to keep me away. Worse, they'd shared it openly, knowing I might see it, or not caring if I did. I sat on the floor, phone in hand, replaying every excuse I'd swallowed. I thought of the $62,300, every transfer and envelope of cash, every unkept promise. Had I ever been anything more than a resource? Did my son love me, or only what I gave? Did my grandchildren know me, or only the grandmother who arrived with gifts and money? The soup began to boil and snapped me back. I turned off the burner, served a bowl I wouldn't eat, and sat at the kitchen table where so many requests had been made. In that heavy silence, I decided I wouldn't cry or confront them. I wouldn't feed their expected drama. I would do something stronger, remain silent and wait. When they came asking again, my reply would be different. Not the submissive answer of the past 8 years, but the reply of a woman who'd finally woken up. I didn't delete the photos or block anyone. I would be strategic. I counted 3 weeks, the time until they returned, and knew that then they'd see the change. The human wallet they'd leaned on had closed. That night, I couldn't sleep. An old part of me died and something new, harder and stronger began to form. The following days felt surreal. I kept my routine, coffee, cleaning, TV, but I was detached, like watching life from underwater where sounds are muffled. Dot knocked on Saturday and walked in as if she owned the place. I showed her the photos. Her face moved from surprise to indignation to cold rage. "That son of a gun," she said bluntly. "This isn't carelessness. This is calculated cruelty." I nodded because I knew if I spoke, I would break. Dot stayed. She didn't offer platitudes. She made me eat, forced me to walk in the park, and most importantly, validated my pain. One evening over tea, she said something that felt like permission. "Ruby, you don't owe them anything. No more chances, no more sacrifices. You've given enough. Now give yourself what they never gave you, respect." Those words let me be angry, to cut ties, to choose myself for the first time in 8 years. Exactly 21 days had passed since I saw the photos. 21 days of absolute silence from Marcus. No messages asking how I was. No quick call to check if I needed anything. Nothing. They were enjoying their luxury cruise and forgot the woman who had been funding their lives. I counted the days, not because I was anxiously waiting, but because I knew eventually they would need something. They always did, and this time I would be ready. I rehearsed my reply over and over, practiced it in the mirror, wrote it down. 4 words that would change everything and restore my dignity. Ask your wife's family. On the morning of the 22nd day, my phone buzzed at 7:15 a.m. It was Marcus. My pulse rose, but not with the old worry, with the steady anticipation of someone who has been waiting for the right moment. I opened the message. Mom, I urgently need $6,000 credit card issue. I'll pay you back next month. I read it 5 times. No greeting, no concern about my well-being after 3 weeks of silence, only the blunt request. $6,000. Urgent, as always, as if 8 years had taught them nothing but that Mom always says yes. The old me might have obliged. The woman who changed in front of those cruise photos did not. My fingers shook as I typed, but the feeling was not fear. It was power, the calm control of someone finally setting a limit. I wrote, ask your wife's family. No more, no less. Sent. The delivery turned to read almost immediately. I pictured his confusion turning to alarm. The phone started ringing right away. Marcus called and called. 17 times in 3 hours. Each unanswered call felt like an act of liberation. I won't pretend it was easy. Years of conditioning urged me to pick up, to explain, to soothe. But a newer, stronger voice reminded me of the photos, of the $62,300, of my right to respect. I did not answer. At 2:00 p.m., Chantel texted. Long, frantic, full of exclamation points. Ruby, I don't understand. Marcus is worried. There must be a misunderstanding. Can we talk like adults? The kids are upset. You can't do this to your family. Her message framed me as the problem, refusing to acknowledge the cruise or the lie. No apology, no recognition, only indignation that I dared say no. I deleted it unread. Letting it sit unread would unsettle her more than any reply. That afternoon, I went to the bank. I asked for the teller with the rectangular glasses who had helped me with the $20,000 transfer. She remembered me. How can I help, ma'am? I said I wanted to close the joint account with my son, cancel the extra cards, and block automatic transfers. She hesitated. Are you sure I was? I signed the forms, and with every signature felt pieces of myself return that I'd given away thinking money bought love. The process took nearly 2 hours. When it was done, she handed me the documents and said quietly, sometimes love makes us blind. I left feeling I had closed more than an account. I had closed 8 years of being invisible and useful only when money was needed. Back home, I had 32 unread messages. Marcus, Chantel, even Jamal had messaged asking what was wrong with Grandma. I scanned them quickly. None asked how I was. None offered apology. They demanded explanations as if I owed them justification for protecting myself. Marcus's last message read, Mom, this is ridiculous. You're an adult. You can't act like a child just because you're upset. Call me and let's talk like civilized people. The tone hardened something inside me. To him, I was a tantruming child, not a woman who had been lied to and exploited. That evening, I set my table properly, used my good plates, and ate slowly. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel that hollow emptiness. After dinner, I made tea and read 3 chapters of a book I'd purchased months earlier and never opened. The phone buzzed occasionally. I ignored it. It no longer controlled my peace. The following days were a mix of relief and anxiety. I felt lighter, as if I had put down a pack of stones I'd carried for years. But I also woke some nights wondering if I'd been too harsh, or if a good mother would act this way. The doubts faded when I remembered the photos, the lies, and the $62,300. Conviction replaced uncertainty. Dot came over every afternoon. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we sat quietly with coffee. Her presence reminded me my reaction was valid. A week after I closed the account, Marcus appeared at my door on a Saturday morning, unannounced, still tanned from the Caribbean, wearing a shirt he'd likely bought on the ship. He rang until I opened. I stood in the doorway. He stayed in the hallway. Mom, we need to talk, he said in that controlling tone. I didn't invite him in. Talk, I replied. He bristled. You can't close the account like that. You can't ignore my calls. I'm your son. Yes, I said evenly. You're my son, and I'm your mother. Not your bank, not your financial fix, not someone you can lie to and exclude when it's convenient. He tried to blame Chantel, saying it was meant to be a surprise. Surprise? I repeated slowly. Surprise by posting pictures where I could see them? Surprise by saying you canceled due to money? Surprise by taking Chantel's parents and not me? He stammered, calling it a misunderstanding. I stopped him. Don't blame Chantel. You called me and lied. At that moment, I saw impatience and irritation. He treated me like an obstacle. You're overreacting. I'm only asking to borrow, not getting a handout. I always pay you back, he insisted. That was the last straw. Never, I said, louder than I'd raised my voice in years. You have never paid me back a cent. In 8 years? Marcus, $62,300. I have it all documented. He looked shocked, as if he'd never imagined I could keep records. That was for the family, for the kids, for emergencies, he said. I asked what emergency the cruise had been. He had no answer, just that look of disbelief, as if I'd become a stranger. Maybe I had. The mother who always said yes had died in the weeks since those photos. This has to be fixed, he pleaded. I need access. I need things to go back to normal. No, I said. That one syllable hung between us. There will be no more transfers, no more loans, no more joint account. It's over. He stepped closer, and for a moment I feared he would yell. Instead, he threatened softly, You're making a mistake. You'll end up old and alone. When you need help, I won't be there. I'm already alone, I replied, controlled and steady. I've been alone for 3 years, valued only when I could give. I'd rather be truly alone than surrounded by people who see me as a walking wallet. He accused me of selfishness, claimed they included me in gatherings and that the kids called. Every sentence confirmed that my presence had been a favor, a payment for my money rather than an act of love. Go, I said. Get out of my house. He probably expected me to break. I didn't. He left, muttering that I would regret it. I watched the elevator close and felt a strange steadiness. The world had not ended. I was still standing. Dot arrived and held me. I'm proud of you, she whispered. We cried, not just for the pain, but for the version of me that had to die. She stayed for dinner. We watched an old movie and I laughed genuinely for the first time in months. The silence from Marcus and Chantel continued. Their messages dwindled and stopped. Perhaps they found another source of money. Perhaps they realized I would not give in. Either way, the quiet was a relief. I began doing things I had postponed for years. I joined a painting class at the community center and met women reclaiming themselves. One of them had gone through something similar, and we became friends. 2 weeks after Marcus's visit, I went to a travel agency because an ad for tours in Italy had caught my eye. I asked about a 10-day all-inclusive tour, $4,500. 6 months earlier, that would have felt selfish or frivolous. Now, after everything, it seemed reasonable. I'll take it, I told the agent. She blinked, offering time to reconsider. No, I said, with the quiet certainty I hadn't had in years. I don't need to think about it. I've been thinking my whole life. It's time to act. Booking that trip was the first truly selfish thing I'd done in decades. Selfish without shame. Simply something for me that didn't solve anyone's problems. I left the travel agency with the documents and a new feeling. Excitement. I called Dot from the street. I did it, I said. I booked Italy. She whooped with joy. When do you leave? In 6 weeks, 10 days, Rome, Florence, Venice. I stood on the sidewalk smiling like a fool, feeling the sun, and thinking that at 73 I might finally be learning to live for myself. The weeks that followed brimmed with preparation. I bought a new suitcase to replace the one full of half-remembered family trips. I tried on dresses I never would have chosen before and picked a mustard-colored one, bold after years of gray and beige. The salesperson said, "It looks gorgeous on you. You look radiant." I looked in the mirror and, for the first time in a long while, liked what I saw. I wasn't only the invisible grandmother or the rejected mother. I was Ruby, a woman choosing herself. I bought the dress and 2 others, comfortable walking shoes, a small camera, and a notebook for impressions. Dot and Yvette helped with maps, restaurants, and must-see lists. It was light and fun. Everything family gatherings never were. No tension, no hidden requests. Just 3 older women excited about an adventure. One afternoon over tea, I asked, "Have you heard from Marcus?" I shook my head. Nothing. "Good," Dot said. Silence is sometimes the clearest answer. She asked if I worried they might show up while I was gone. I thought honestly and replied, "No, I'm not afraid of anything they can do or say anymore. That power is over." 2 weeks before departure, an unexpected email arrived from a name I didn't recognize. Chuck Holt, Chantel's father. He wrote that he'd learned about the cruise and the lie. He said he hadn't known and wouldn't have accepted the invitation if he had, offered me an apology on his and his wife's behalf, and promised they would no longer accept anything that indirectly came from my generosity. I read it 3 times. I hadn't expected decency from that side of the family. I replied briefly, thanked him for his honesty, and felt a small, surprising hope. Not for Marcus to change, but that decent people still existed. The day before my trip, Jamal called. I hesitated, then answered. "Grandma?" His voice was nervous. "I want to apologize. I know about the cruise. I know you've been giving for years." I stayed silent, and I'm sorry. He told me Marcus and Chantel were in serious financial trouble, that they'd relied on my money as part of their budget, and that since I closed the account, they were panicking. My heart hardened. The emergencies had been a lifestyle. "I'm not calling to ask you to help," Jamal said. "I want you to know I don't think like them, and if you ever want a relationship independent of them, I would like that." Those words moved me more than any apology from my son might. "I would like that too," I said, voice breaking. "Enjoy your trip," he replied, and Naomi told him I deserved it. We hung up. I cried quietly, but they were not only sad tears. They felt like relief and validation. Dot and Yvette came with me to the airport the next morning. I had my mustard dress, my camera, my notebook, and for the first time in years, hope. That good things still waited for me, that it wasn't too late to be happy. We hugged at security. "You'll be incredible," Dot said. "Come back renewed." I promised I would. Walking through the terminal, every step away felt lighter, paid for by my own work, my own savings. No one else's approval required. The flight was long, but I watched clouds and thought about the $62,300. The lies, the boundaries I'd set, and this freedom. Stepping off in Rome, I was present for the first time in ages. Not worrying about Marcus, not justifying spending on myself. I was there to discover Italy and to discover who Ruby was when no one else mattered. Italy became a revelation. In Florence, I walked until my feet ached and spent time at the Uffizi, standing before a painting for 20 minutes in quiet. No one rushed me, no one complained. I ate at a small trattoria where the waiter treated me like the most important guest, recommended wine, told neighborhood stories, and made me laugh genuinely. In Venice, I sat by the canals and watched the water and people. Families, couples, and older people like me, each exactly where they belonged. I opened my notebook and wrote loose thoughts. I have lived 73 years, and only now understand that my happiness should not depend on making others happy. Giving until I was empty was not love. It was self-destruction. Real family respects your heart, not merely your wallet. An Italian woman with white hair sat nearby and asked where I was from. "America," I said. "Traveling alone?" "Yes." For the first time, that phrase sounded like choice, not loneliness. She nodded and said she'd also chosen to keep her last years for herself. We talked for an hour about disappointments and small rebellions. I told her my story, and in that shared silence between women who had spent lives prioritizing others, I felt understood. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she placed her wrinkled hand over mine. You did the right thing, she said simply. Forgiveness is important, but self-respect is sacred. We hugged, said our goodbyes, and I never saw her again. But her words stayed with me. In Florence, I visited the Duomo and climbed to the top. The steps were steep and my breathing labored, but I kept going. From the summit, the city spread out beneath me. For the first time, my problems, my pains, my ungrateful son, looked small against the vastness of the world. I took photos not for anyone else, but to prove to myself that Ruby had been there, that I existed beyond being mother, grandmother, or wallet. A young couple asked me to photograph them and then insisted on taking one of me. I hesitated, unused to the center of attention, but I agreed. The wind moved my gray hair and I smiled, a real, effortless smile. When I later saw the picture, I barely recognized myself. There was a new look in my eyes, something like freedom. Every city taught me something. In Venice, watching the gondolas, I realized the most valuable things need patience and care. Patience I'd wasted on people who didn't value it. In Rome, eating authentic pasta, I understood that nourishing body and soul isn't selfish. It's survival. I had spent years feeding others while I starved emotionally. In each place, I left pieces of the old Ruby, the fearful, guilty woman who measured her worth by usefulness, until only the new Ruby remained, someone who knew her value and didn't ask permission to be happy. Most of the trip, I kept my phone in airplane mode. I turned it on once a day to send Dot a quick text saying I was okay. I didn't check Marcus's messages or social media. I refused to be pulled back into a life that had consumed me. It felt like detox from an addiction I hadn't known I had. The addiction to being needed, to being valued only for what I gave. I was learning to matter to myself, and that was enough. On the last night of the tour, we had a farewell dinner in Rome. 15 people from different countries. When the guide asked us to share, I hesitated, but then I spoke. My voice trembled as I said the trip wasn't just about Italy. It was about finding myself after years of disappearing into others' needs. I'd cut financial ties with my son, decided my last years were mine, and discovered I could be happy alone. Chosen solitude, I said, is better than company that makes you invisible. The trip saved what was left of my dignity. When I finished, a few people had tears in their eyes. A Canadian woman stood and hugged me. Me too, she whispered. I'm learning that too. We hugged like sisters. That night in my hotel, I finally turned my phone on. 53 unread messages. Most were from unknown numbers. Some were from Chantel, a few from Marcus. I opened one from Chantel at random. Ruby, Marcus, and I are having serious financial problems. We had to sell the car. The kids are suffering because of your selfishness. I hope you're happy. I read it without feeling anger or guilt, only indifference. How could someone spend money they didn't have, then blame me? I deleted it. The rest were the same, accusations and manipulation. And this time they had no power. I deleted them all without replying. There was one from Jamal. Different. Grandma, I hope your trip is amazing. Mom and Dad are mad, but that's not your problem. I started looking for a job so I can move out. I don't want to be part of this dynamic anymore. When you get back, I'd like to see you, just you and me. Those words made me cry. Good tears, tears of hope. My grandson was breaking the pattern. I answered, Jamal, the trip was transformative. I'd love to see you when I get back. I'm proud of you. I love you. Sent. Then I turned the phone off again. Tomorrow I would fly home, but I would not be the same woman who left. That Ruby stayed somewhere between Rome and Venice. The returning Ruby was stronger, more whole. The return flight felt like gratitude rather than nervous hope. Gratitude for the lessons, the boundaries, and the times I chose my peace over their approval. Dot and Yvette met me at the airport. They ran and hugged me, crying and laughing. You look different, Dot said, peering into my face. There's something in your eyes. I agreed. I am different. I am complete. On the way home, I told them about the cities, the woman by the water, the farewell dinner. When we arrived at my apartment, a plain brown papered box waited at my door. Dot and Yvette asked if they should stay while I opened it. I nodded. Inside were things that made my hands tremble. A letter in a white envelope. All the cards I'd given Marcus over the years. Old photos of him as a child. His graduation, his wedding, and at the bottom a check. I pulled it out. $5,000, signed by Marcus. In the memo line, first payment. I stared at it, unsure what to feel. Dot urged me to read the letter. The handwriting was Marcus's. He wrote he'd rewritten the letter many times and that nothing seemed enough. He admitted he'd used and lied to me, that it had been easier to keep taking my money than face their problems. He confessed he and Chantel had lived beyond their means and that the cruise had been the last straw. Closing the account had forced consequences. Selling the car, missed payments. He wrote that Jamal had told him hard truths, that Marcus had treated me like a wallet, not a mother, and that he finally saw it. He said the $5,000 was all he could gather by selling things and extra work, and he planned to pay $1,000 a month until he repaid everything. He didn't expect forgiveness. He only wanted to do what was right. He said he and Chantel were in couples therapy and he was starting individual therapy. He asked only for me to know he'd understood and was sorry. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I read. Dot and Yvette watched me. "What will you do?" Dot asked. I didn't know. Part of me wanted to tear the check up and say it was too late. Another small part wanted to believe change was possible. Yvette took my hand. "You don't have to decide now. Let time tell you if it's genuine." She was right. I'd learned not every decision needs an immediate answer. I put the letter and check in a drawer to decide later. For now, I wanted to enjoy being home after a life-changing trip. That night we cooked, laughed, and I shared photos. My apartment felt full in the right way. The days that followed, I settled into a new routine. I no longer spent hours waiting for messages. I filled my time with things I enjoyed. Painting class, walks with Dot, coffee with Yvette, and video calls with Jamal, who kept his promise and visited without his parents. His visits were different. He came with stories about work, genuine questions about my life, and a real desire to know me beyond the role I had played. One afternoon, he brought flowers just because, and I cried because someone in my family was finally giving without expecting anything in return. That was real family. 6 months later, I still hadn't cashed Marcus's check, but each week an envelope with $1,000 arrived in my mailbox. No notes, just the money. We met for coffee occasionally, brief and with boundaries. Chantel and I kept a cordial but distant relationship. The children visited regularly, and without parental pressure, we built something honest. Dot and Yvette became my chosen family. We traveled, laughed, and aged together without asking permission. I went back to Italy the next year with Dot. The places were the same, but I was different, stronger, more whole, more mine. Today, 2 years after seeing those cruise photos, I am at peace. Marcus has paid about $32,000 toward the $62,000 he owes. Our relationship is cordial, but not what it was, and that's okay. I learned the most important lesson of my life at 73. Real family doesn't charge admission. Real love doesn't empty your bank account or your soul. It's never too late to choose yourself. I didn't lose $62,000. I bought my freedom, my dignity, my peace, the chance to live my last years without carrying others' expectations. If my story moved you or made you reflect on your boundaries, then my pain served something bigger. It's a reminder that you deserve respect, that you can say no and you can choose yourself without guilt. In the end, the only person you live with your whole life is yourself. And that person deserves your love, protection, and loyalty before you give them to anyone else, even family. If you liked my story, tell me where you're listening from in the comments. If it spoke to you, you can support me with a super thanks so I can keep sharing stories like this. Thank you for your kindness. I look forward to reading your thoughts. On screen, you'll find 2 new life stories I recommend. There's more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time with love and respect.